I was up early this morning watching Joe Scarborough, and I do this not because I enjoy it, friends. I do it so that you don't have to. But I was watching Joe Scarborough and I was seeing him scoff incredulously at all the GOP luminaries who've been defending their Führer's nutty comments about widespread voter fraud happening that's causing the election to be stolen from him. Now, aside from the fact that Scarborough will never admit that his party's been carrying out the Heritage Foundation co-founders Paul Weyrich's mandate on not wanting everyone to vote for decades already, I found it funny that he was shocked, I tell you, that people like Newt Gingrich and Bill Bennett and Rudy Giuliani were defending Trump. You know, as light on real policy that will improve the material conditions of working class and poor people in this country that the Democratic Party really is, the idea that the GOP has ever actually been about any real values or any real morality is incredibly laughable. And it was pretty amusing to see Scarborough sit there and feign shock that these morally bankrupt people could fix their lips to defend Trump. I mean, Scarborough was surprised that Bill Bennett defended Trump. Bill Bennett, Secretary of Education under Ronald Reagan, Bill Bennett, who lambasted schools for not setting and meeting high standards, and as drug czar under George H.W. Bush, had no compassion for people suffering from addiction, saying that they have a moral responsibility to own up to their addiction. Bill Bennett, the guy who wrote the Book of Virtues after he retired from public office, in which he wrote, quote, "We should know that too much of anything, even a good thing, may prove to be our undoing. We need to set definite boundaries on our appetites." Bill Bennett, who also had a raging gambling habit that he explained away as something that relaxed him, but he tried really hard to hide it from public scrutiny, being the upstanding Catholic that he was. So while Bennett was moralizing and condemning gays and addicts and Ricky Lake, I remember that he really, really hated that show. He was also taking those $50,000 speaking fees that he demanded and raking up over $8 million in gambling losses in New Jersey and Nevada by the early 2000s. He even lied about what he did with his gambling winnings, saying, "I've made a lot of money in book sales and speaking fees and other business ventures, and I've won a lot of money. When I win, I usually give at least a chunk of it away to charity. I report everything to the IRS." Documents, however, did not reflect that he consistently won enough to do that. So he usually used his massive line of credit at these casinos to float his habit. Bennett's hypocrisy at that point was no surprise, even as his organization, Empower America, was opposed to expanding gambling in the states. But Bennett moralized his own personal habit as something that if you can't handle it, you shouldn't do it. He could handle it because he's rich enough to absorb those losses and powerful enough to have other people cover him for him when he couldn't. You and me, we're sinful, and we need to own up to our problems. Scarborough is surprised that this guy makes excuses for Trump. Okay. Scarborough was surprised that Newt Gingrich would defend Trump. Gingrich, former Speaker of the House during Bill Clinton's presidency, Newt Gingrich, Contract with America, Newt Gingrich, who wrote the strategic roadmap for the GOP to focus on a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution, a crime bill financing prison construction and additional law enforcement, an exhortation to discourage illegitimacy and teen pregnancy and reform welfare, to increase military spending and decrease participation in the United Nations, to focus on capital gains tax cuts, and to fight for term limits for legislators. Gingrich, who also cheated on his first and second wives and was having an affair with another woman during the impeachment hearings against Bill Clinton, for Clinton's dalliance with Monica Lewinsky, or at least for lying about it. Upon winning the House Majority Whip race against challenger Tony Center in 1992, Gingrich said that he was so disgusted by the level of filth and degradation in politics that he had considered dropping out of the race. The guy who used taxpayer money to pay for his limousines had to be ordered by a court to pay for his kids' heat and electricity in a divorce proceeding. Joe Scarborough was surprised that this man would defend Donald Trump. And Rudy Giuliani, for real, y'all? Giuliani, who practically started a police riot in New York City after he stood on stage at a rally with the white NYPD cop who killed Jose Kiko Garcia and blamed David Dinkins, the current mayor of New York City at the time, for it, who he had just lost that mayoral race to. Off-duty cops rushed barricades, stood on top of cars, and blocked traffic, chanting Giuliani's name after that rally. And Giuliani rode white grievance politics in New York to win the mayoral election in the next year and immediately implemented tough on crime, broken windows policies that we've always known were racist. But now we have proof that they are racist and that they are ineffective at anything other than being racist. Giuliani, whose estranged wife revealed in 2018 that he'd been having an affair with a married hospital administrator for years, and that wasn't even the first time. And then there's this whole Borat movie thing. Don't make me explain that. It's disgusting. These are the people that Joe Scarborough is somehow shocked and surprised are so morally deficient that they would defend the baseless claims about widespread voter fraud from Donald Trump. How? When these men's policies and their personal behavior and hypocrisy that all the GOP voters who loved them supported, that literally paved the way for Donald Trump and all his baggage to come along and capture the allegiance of half the country, these men created it. How in the world is anybody surprised at any of this? Follow Lukman Nation on patreon.com/LukmanNation for lots of great content.